Matthew, you've gone from childhood abuse and heroin addiction to bare knuckle fighting. How close were you to not making it out alive?
I've overdosed a couple of times. I overdosed in an alleyway in Manchester with a needle hanging out my neck. That for me was the start of a changing point. That was when I realised I need to start sorting my shit out, because otherwise I ain't going to be around much longer to sort it out. So that was a very pivotal point in my life. From that pivotal point, I went into I got sectioned to start with. I spent a lot of time in mental health institutions up and down the country over the years. And as a result of that, I got sober, and I thought, right, now I've done my withdrawals, I've done my shaking and shitting, and I feel a little bit better. Probably now is the time to get into rehab and get healthy. So that was like the start of like my recovery journey.
At what age did you actually start taking drugs, and how long did your...
So I started taking drugs at the age of 12. So when I was a kid, I was sexually abused by a family friend. This gave me the need and want to escape reality. The reality I was living was quite traumatizing, quite scary. So I had the need to escape. What I found was drugs were an easy way to escape. There was lots of people with drugs in my area, and they were quite accessible. So I started heroin and crack, smoking heroin and crack from the age of 12. By the ages of 15, I was injecting.
Wow.
And that stemmed on probably till I was about 27, man. I've had brief intervals in my life where I've done 3 months clean, 6 months clean, a month clean, and I've always reverted back. Now I think this is in a form of self-sabotage, because the not knowing what was about to come. So even though I knew being sober and I knew getting better was what I wanted and what I needed, I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know what the experience was and how I was going to deal with it. So I think often I would self-sabotage and revert back to doing drugs because it was a coping mechanism I knew. It was something I've done my whole life. So I just sort of fell back into it a lot. And then, like I say, an alleyway in Manchester really set me back. And I thought, right, now's the time I need to shape my life.
Wow, so, I mean, at the age of 12 onwards, that's really young. So where was your parents at that time? Were they aware of it?
So my mum and dad had split up. My dad and me have a bit of a rocky relationship before him and my mum split up. He was a bit physically abusive, but I think more in the sense of that was the cards he was also dealt in life, so it was learnt behaviour. I don't really hold anything against him for it. Him and my mum split up. My mum got this family friend involved because she thought I needed a father role model. That's when the abuse started. So I think my parents knew I was doing drugs, but they didn't know why, and they didn't know what drugs I was doing. And I think they probably just thought I was smoking a bit of weed and I was maybe just being bad because my mum and dad had split up, rather than what was actually happening.
And who's this friend? Who was he to the family?
So it was my mum's old boss. He'd been a family friend for as long as I can remember. He's been involved in my life. He was a chairman of Eden District Council. And he was quite a well-to-do guy, did a lot of charity work, did a lot of stuff that in the public eye would appear to be quite a well-to-do, nice person. But I suppose that's the mask they hide behind.
And what was the darkest moment of your life?
I think the darkest moment of my life was the first time I was raped. So, like, often I'll use the word sexual assault, but like I was raped, and I was just a young kid. I still, even to this day, can remember the first time, like when I close my eyes, I can still smell the same smells. I can still feel the same feelings, and it still draws up that sick and shame feeling sometimes. But for me, what that marked was the end of my innocence. I really was forced into growing up beyond my years very fast because of what I went through.
And it was through that guy?
Yeah.
Did it happen multiple times?
Yeah, for years. It went on for years, and I'd like to say it wasn't a regular occurrence, but it was pretty much a daily occurrence. Like, I got kicked out of school. I went to a few different secondary schools. People thought I was acting out because my mum and dad had split up. This behaviour then got me excluded from schools. Schools stopped me going in. And as a result of this, my mum thought I needed more discipline and more time with this person who was abusing me. So I sort of segregated myself into spending more time with him by accident, really, by outlashing and committing trouble and being problemed. I then backed myself into a corner where I was more put into his guidance more, put into his world a bit more, which obviously as a result ended in me being abused more, ended in my emotions being sort of stricken away, my self-regulation system being destroyed.
And did you feel that like your life was basically over at that point?
Yeah, so like it's weird. Like I didn't really associate the fact that I'd been raped or sexually abused. Like that wasn't really something I could resonate with in my head, because I don't think I really understood what was going on. I was really young. And it didn't just happen straight away. I was being groomed for a long time. And obviously these people plant these seeds and they make you feel a particular way before they start doing stuff like this, so that you're less likely to believe, or at least so you feel like you're less likely to believe. What it did for me was destroy my foundation of how I viewed the world, how I viewed love, how I trusted people. And it really set me off on a bad path. It sent me down a completely different path than I would have once wanted to walk.
And do you feel that it affects your relationships even till today?
Yeah, 100%. So I often overcompensate and try to love people into loving me. Like for as much as people get mistaken about me, I've had a hard time. I've been a dickhead, and I'm not saying throughout the years I've been lovely in relationships, because I've not been. I've been toxic, and especially going through my drug addiction, I was horrible to women. I was horrible to everyone, including myself, and I lived a very toxic life. As the years have gone on, my need to feel accepted and my need to feel loved has got greater, probably stemming from abandonment issues when I was a kid and the lack of love I was shown as a kid. So now I really crave it. I've had to learn the hard way that sometimes I confuse intimacy with love and lust with love. I'm very ADHD, so I'm very all or nothing. I mean, I can't have half a foot in, half a foot out. It's something I've tried to do my whole life. I struggle with moderation, and that includes relationships. It includes everything. Like if I'm going out with someone, I seem to divert a lot of my attention to them, and I seem to be all in. And some people don't know how to deal with that. It can be a lot. Some people don't receive that well. That's not the language they want to be loved in. So like at the moment, I'm learning to try and familiarize myself with other people, pick up on body language and pick up on reading people and ask a bit more questions when getting into a relationship, because obviously everyone's different, and what might be suitable for one person might be not suitable. Do you know what I mean? So it's quite a navigational system that I've had to try and get used to, because for me, my view on love was completely destroyed. So like now it's trying to reset it back together, piece together a healthy version of love that I can view from like my perception that I live now.
And at what age did you actually tell someone about, who did you tell first about this guy raping you, and what happened to him?
I was 15 when I first come out about it, and I was working in a restaurant at the time, washing dishes. So like I've always worked, I've always tried to fund my own drug problems through work, and trying to be honest, obviously I've fallen into crime and done stuff as well to try and sort of fund my habits. But I was working at the time washing dishes, and someone made a joke, probably now a joke I would laugh at because I've got quite a dark sense of humour, probably stemming from what I've been through. I think if you can make it something that you laugh about, then it causes less pain. But at the time it was really something that resonated with me and made me feel horrible. And I was going out with someone at the time. I then went to the person I was in a relationship with and told her and her mum. And as a result of that, the man rang the police and said, "Look, we need to make sure you're all right." And that sort of started the long-winded sort of process of it all stopping.
Okay, and then what happened to this guy?
So it turned out prehistorically he'd abused like 5 or 6 other children when he worked in a boarding school. So as a result of me coming out about it and being in the paper, other people come out about it from years ago. And he ended up going to court. He ended up getting found guilty of 5 or 6 child abuse cases, and he got 10 years for abusing me and 5 years for abusing these other lads, because it was prehistoric sentencing. They go by prehistoric guidelines. So I think in total he got 15 years, and I think he served probably like 6 or 7.
What was your childhood like growing up?
I mean, it wasn't all bad. Like I've had good times doing bad things. That's the issue. Like I've lived a very hostile and sort of almost angry life, partying, taking drugs, committing crimes. I've met some fantastic people while doing these things during my childhood. Some really great people that I think are just misguided and misunderstood. And some of them people have lost their lives due to drug abuse. Some of them are in jail. I don't think it takes away the fundamentals for them being good people. I think good people sometimes just make shitty decisions. My childhood on a whole was rough. It was a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of abuse, and a lot of drug use. As a result of this, I think I conditioned myself to sort of living in the way of harm, thinking and feeling like abuse was a normal part of my daily life. So it just sort of all blended in and just became quite a dark period for me.
And looking back now, do you think that the trauma you went through as a child, shaped the path that you walk now later in life?
100%. So I feel like I've probably grown up into the person that would have protected me as a kid. Like fighting, not taking shit off people, not standing for abuse. I'm one of these people, I believe in a good sense of justice, whether it's for myself or other people. Sometimes that gets me in trouble. I think it's definitely shaped who I am. It's shaped my view on relationships, the relationships I have with people. It's shaped almost every aspect of my life, whether it's good or bad. A question I often get asked is, if I could go back in time, would I change my childhood? Would I change anything? And the answer, as sad as it is no, because I don't think I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have the memories I have. I wouldn't have the relationships I have. I wouldn't have the attitude and perception I have towards helping people, I think, if I didn't go through what I went through. So even though it was traumatic, and even though it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and probably the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me, it needed to happen.
Yeah, I truly believe that if one thing happened different in our life, then our life would have taken a way different path.
Yeah,
you might be in a different
effect,
country, or you might have been, like you say, still a junkie, or end up with a family and 12 kids.
Yeah, you never know, and the thought of not knowing, I just leave down to God, man. Like, it didn't happen. My life hasn't worked out like that. So all I can do is shape and move forward with the life I've got and the perceptions I've got, the views I've got, and all I can do is continue to try and grow as a person. And I think as long as you're learning, and as long as you're growing, and as long as you are trying to live a good moral life, you'll always be all right.
And who is God to you, and when did he come into your life?
So God to me is the classic sense of God, the creator of the world, the father of Jesus. I believe, well, I'm a Christian, so I believe in God. This only started a few years ago for me. It's very new. When I got sober, I needed to admit. So I went down the AACA route to get sober, went into rehab, and they always talk about a higher power, or they talk about finding something bigger than you. As a result of this, I started going to church, I started reading my AA book, and then I started reading the Bible. And something about not having to be alone anymore and walking with God gave me a sense of purpose and pride within myself. Also made me feel not alone. So it took a lot of anxiety out of my life and out of a lot of situations. And as a result of that, my faith is really strong now. I go to church every Sunday. I'm doing a leadership course within my church to try and sort of help spread the word of God and spread the good message that they bring. And it's brought me some fantastic opportunities as well. Like, I got to go into Deerbolt Prison up north near Barnard Castle with my church, and I got to share my testimony about how I've got sober, the faith I've found, the recovery route I went down, and the finding purpose in pain. And I got to give this talk to lads that were going through life sentences, that were suffering through their own issues. And it was a really profound and pleasant experience, I think, for everyone involved, myself, because it felt like I was giving back. And the lads really paid attention. The questions at the end were really good. So I really hope I've given them some form of guidance or faith or hope, and they can sort of look at their lives in a bit of a different light now. But this is all a result of finding faith and finding God. Like, my life has drastically improved since finding God. And that's one thing I always say to people. Like, I know what my life was like before God, and I know what it was like after. And I much prefer my life. Now I've got God in it, so it's definitely something I'll keep. My faith is definitely something I'll hold on to for the rest of my life.
Absolutely, I agree. And then how quickly did it go from experimenting to full-blown heroin and crack addiction?
Pretty much straight away. So I remember trying drugs really young. Like I was smoking weed from like 11-year-old and then drinking. And then when I started cocaine when I was 12, and that led on to crack and heroin. And it was just trying little bits. And after about trying it 3 or 4 times, I was hooked. I couldn't put it down. Everything I did was built on the need to go out and get high. And it didn't really matter what I was getting high on. But obviously crack and heroin's quite cheap. When you've got a habit, obviously it becomes more and more expensive. But the actual cost of heroin and crack can be sold quite cheap. So it was easier to get hold of as a kid who had very little money. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And how do the lifestyle actually look like? You know, a day in the life when you're that deep into addiction?
Well, I was so in the morning, like at the height of my addiction, in the morning I was waking up sick, I was shaking, I was shitting, I was puking, and I was feeling really disgusting and rotten until I went out and got fixed. I've been out shoplifting, I've been out burgling, I've gone out and committed crime, I've robbed people at cash points, I've gone in shops with knives and robbed shop owners at knife point. Everything I did was to feed a habit, and I would lie and manipulate my way into the lives of many people in order to get what I want. I was a very deceptive person. Everything had an ulterior motive. So even if I was being nice to people, the niceness was coming out of the need to want to do something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's amazing that you can admit it, you know. I think that is the
Well,
first
I think massively life's about accountability, isn't it? Do you know, like, ultimately I don't think we can move on from things until we deal with them. The way to deal with them is to talk them out, and you've got to admit your downsides and your own faults. Like I fully admit I've never been perfect in my life. Yeah, the way I've been made, the way God has made me is I'm always going to be a sinner. I can only just try to live life and try to commit as least amount of sins as possible. But as humans, we've all got free will, and we all live our own lives. But I think taking accountability is a good way to grow. It's to admit that I recognise the problem and now I can sort of deal with it. Whereas when we're in that denial stage, we're not recognising, so we're not dealing with it, we're just suppressing.
And was there a moment where something clicked, where you realised something's got to change, I want to come right now?
Yeah, so I've had lots of near-death experiences. I've burnt lots of bridges and I've ruined relationships over and over again. Like the amount of times I've built bridges back up from relationships I've burnt down with family and friends, to them burning them down again. It's almost like I really didn't give a fuck about anyone else as long as I was alright. And I was never alright, but I was under this illusion that if I took drugs I was alright because I didn't feel anything. So as a result of that, I lived a very hostile life. I did a lot of bad things. And the turning point for me should have been when I had my son, when I was really young, but it wasn't. It should have been when my mum was crying to me on the phone. It should have been when my granddad died. It should have been thousands of different times. Should have made me got sober, but they didn't. It was the dropping to my knees at the depth of my despair and praying to God to end my life or to end what I was going through. And then a few days later I overdosed. And that for me was like the fundamental source of I need to change, I need to become better, because otherwise I'm going to be dead. And if I'm dead, I've got no experience of life. I can't help people, I can't help myself. And I'm really going to affect other people's mental health because I can't get my own shit together.
And what was the hardest part about getting clean?
Leaving behind all my supposed friends and people I thought I was close to, because the truth and reality of drug abuse is most of your relationships are out of convenience or out of ulterior motives. I hang around with you because you get me high on a Wednesday every other week. You hang about with me because I get you high on a Tuesday every other week when we get paid. And relationships become sources of drug use. They become reliable for being able to dip out your own life. And I think for me, what it was the need to be better. So I needed to surround myself with better people and do better things. And that for me was like a monumental difference. So stopping hanging around with, it's like your network's your net worth. If you hang around with crackheads, you're going to be the fifth crackhead. If you hang around with rich people, ultimately you'll probably fall into being a very rich person. So when I heard your network's your net worth, that was something for me, right? I need to cut off most people I speak to in my life. Now that I'm solidified in my sobriety and my recovery, I talk to people that I used to hang around with when I was young because they're no longer detrimental to my mental health or my sobriety, because I'm at a point where I feel I'm safe and I'm clean and I'm good. So I'm able to sort of dip back into people's lives and try and offer a helping hand, whereas at one point I had to be selfish in order to look out for myself.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you take the substance away, you don't really have much in common with these people.
Not all.
So what helped you then to stay clean? You know.
So finding faith was a big thing for me to stay clean. Finding faith, realising that I can't do this on my own, that I need help. God was my help. It also gave me a good community to fall into by going to church, by meeting people that believed in God, that were completely away from drugs, completely away from anything like that. It gave me a new sense of community, which helped me and allowed me to build a new sort of sense of family. It was probably one of the first places I'd ever felt accepted truly for who I was, and I didn't have to mask and mirror and put on these false personas in order to be accepted. So for me, that really solidified my sobriety, and it solidified my faith into the point where it was like I knew after a couple of spiritual experiences and going to church that I was never going to touch drugs again.
It's amazing. So, you recently did an ayahuasca experience. Yeah. So what led you down that road?
So, for me, this is something I've been really excited to touch base on. So, obviously, I come up through an NA and AA route, which is strict, no drink, no drugs. So, for some people in AA and NA, they would have thought that me going over to do an ayahuasca retreat was a relapse. But when I spoke to some people, they said, how do I view it? Do I view it as a medicine or do I view it as a drug? Obviously, the active ingredient in ayahuasca is DMT, but it is natural and it's been used for thousands of years, millions of years since the beginning of time as a plant-based medicine before we had all these pharmaceutical drugs. So when I looked at it, someone said to me, do you view it as a drug or do you view it as a healing medicine? I said, well, I view it as a medicine. He went, would you be all right with taking a paracetamol if you had a headache? I said, well, yeah. He went, well, why are you not all right with doing this? So it was at that point I started viewing it through a different lens. I started doing a bit more research into it and being a bit open-minded. So the initial invite to the retreat come from Mark Irwin. Shout out to Mark Irwin and Ian McCall from Athlete's Journey Home, man. Like, absolutely.
And that's the tattoo we're doing?
Yeah, that's the tattoo, that's the logo. I'm getting Athlete's Journey
afterwards.
Home. Yeah, well, it really marks a monumental pivot point in my life. So Mark Irwin, for me, is one of my favourite bare knuckle boxers and has been for many years. Like, even before sobriety, I've watched bare knuckle boxing for a long time. Like, it's something I enjoy because I enjoy fighting and I enjoy watching violence. Probably because I've lived quite a violent lifestyle myself. I find sort of peace in that art form. So Mark Irwin and me have spoke quite a lot because we were both signed to BKB, and he messaged me, he said, listen, how would you like to come to Colombia and come on an ayahuasca retreat? And I was like, you know, I'd love that, but financially, I'm not the most in the best position. He said, well, listen, shout out to Mike Vasquez as well, owner of BKB, president. He funded and donated a lot of money to Athlete's Journey Home to send his athletes on these retreats to help heal from brain injury and traumatic experiences through fighting. So the idea of going and doing ayahuasca was to help stuff like CTE, brain injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder. It can help addictions. It can help anxiety, depression. It is a medicine that can heal 1,000 different things. So did a lot of research into it, ended up speaking to Mark and Ian quite a lot, and then next thing I know I had tickets booked to Medellin, which for me was quite an experience in itself, getting over there and travelling as well, because I'd never really gone out the country on my own. And then I flew to South America, which was 3 different flights. So I had to fly from Newcastle to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Panama, and then Panama to Medellin. It was about 20 hours of flying. It's a very long and overwhelming experience. But when I got there, I found myself in one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been in. And that started the ayahuasca journey, which for me was amazing, man. I got invited to go away with some people that I've looked up to for years, like Ian McCall, ex-UFC world champion. You know, you've got Mark Irwin, bare knuckle boxing, BKB world champion. Like these are really profound people in the sports and the line of work they're in, and they're offering to help me. So I went over. I spent 10 days in Colombia at one of the nicest places I've ever been in my life, Luara. Anyone that's thinking about maybe going and doing one of these retreats, look into Luara. They specialise in ayahuasca retreats. And for me, the first couple of days we spent getting into the experience and like sort of gelling with each other, getting to know each other, because none of us had really met. Previous to going away to Colombia, I was with a girl. I got with a girl, and we found out she was pregnant. So whilst I went to Colombia, she was pregnant. On the first couple of days, like I say, we spent time getting to know each other, connecting with each other, and sort of taking away that anxiety and not knowing people really, and getting to know a little bit about the medicine we were doing. We were doing vulnerability circles, talking about past traumas, and sort of really releasing our intentions to the medicine out loud. Whilst all this is happening, a documentary crew are filming a documentary. So we're being medically studied for science. We're hooked up to machines scanning our brains before, after, and during. On the day of the first ceremony, I had quite a heartbreaking, traumatic experience. So my ex-girlfriend at the time had rang me and said she was going to hospital, that she was experiencing a miscarriage. Which obviously I'm on the other side of the world at this point. And it was, you know, really sad, really traumatic. I just burst out crying. And luckily I had a really good group of people around me to support me. People I didn't know, but people I felt I'd known for years, coming around, hugging me, supporting me, helping me just sit with my thoughts, allowing me to cry, allowing me to feel my emotions. Obviously, I made sure she was all right as best as I could on the other side of the world. But she was suffering through something, well, traumatic as well. So she was going through her own process. This made me really nervous about taking ayahuasca. It threw me sort of in at the deep end. I thought, right, my head's all over. I was coming into this with a real sense of clarity, imagining, oh, you know, like I've got a missus at home, she's pregnant, I'm going to be a dad, I'm going to get the chance to have a family, I'm going to get the chance to get married and really fall in love and really spend the rest of my life loving a woman and loving a child and bringing a child up from the start in a good, loving family home. I now understand that as much as I wanted that, it probably wasn't God's timing. As a result of this, you know, the miscarriage happened, and I went into the first ceremony terrified and scared, because I thought, I'm not in the headspace to do this. But I thought, right, I've come here to heal. I've come here to experience the medicine. So I thought, right, I'm going to go in, and I threw myself in at the deep end. My first ayahuasca experience, truly mind-blowing. So we were in a maloca, which is like a bamboo hut. We're lying on mattresses. We're hooked up to brain scanners. And they put some music on, we do a bit of breath work, bit of meditation to really start the process. Then you have your first cup of ayahuasca. You sort of start to feel a bit connected. I knew I was feeling connected because the bamboo ceiling started to turn into stained glass windows. And I was like, right, well, this definitely isn't fact. I know that was wood about 10 minutes ago. The Virgin Mary's now staring in my eyes, and I'm a little bit scared out. So I rested, listened to the music, then we went up for a second cup of ayahuasca. Now, during ayahuasca ceremonies, you purge a lot, so this means you're sick a lot, you can be shitting a lot, and it can come out of both ends. So you've got to walk around with a bucket, and you've got to run to the toilet. I really wouldn't trust a fart if I was on ayahuasca. It can be a bit touch and go. My experience started off with a lot of purging, so feeling like all the bad energy and all the bad juju that I'd built up in my life was coming out my body, and it was coming out fast, man. Like I was puking loads, I felt awful, and my perception on reality was really starting to warp. Anyway, I needed to go to the toilet, so I bolted, and once I was in the toilet, this cubicle started closing in on me, and I felt like all this bad energy, it was coming out of both ends, and I felt really unsafe at the time. I felt really scared. Then all of a sudden, and this is going to sound really mad, for someone who's never done psychedelics, for people listening that have never done psychedelics or never had any experience with stuff like this It's going to sound weird, it's going to sound strange and very unbelievable, but for people that have had psychedelic experiences, for people that have read into it, this is my experience, my journey, my story, and I can only explain it and tell it how I perceived it and what I perceive. So I was in this cubicle, I'm puking, I'm shitting, and then all of a sudden I feel this hand on my shoulder. And I knew the hand was almost metaphorical because I was in this cubicle on my own. I knew I was in this cubicle on my own. And I was crying my eyes out. All of a sudden I felt this hand on my shoulder saying, Matthew, don't worry, I've seen all the trials and tribulations you've been through in your life. The reason you've had to go through all this heartache, all this pain, all this hurt is because you are destined for bigger things. You are designed to show people their true strength. I've had to show you your true strength so you can come through the other side of it and help heal people, whether it's through the message of God, whether it's spreading the word of this medicine.
And this is a voice you could hear.
Yeah, clear as day. And it wasn't, do you know, sometimes when you have thoughts, it's your own voice narrating your thought, isn't it? Well, for most people it is. This wasn't my own voice, it was a foreign voice, but it felt warm and recognisable, like I'd heard this voice before. And the only way I can explain it is God. And God was telling me, listen, I see everything you've been through, but you have had to go through this to recognise your own strength, because I need you to go and spread the message of what you've been through in order to help heal other people. So after this, being sick, puking, carrying on crying, carried on for a few more minutes, and then all of a sudden, I look down, and I'm still on the toilet, my arms are crossed like this, and I can hear this baby crying, and I'm thinking, what the fuck's going on, man? Like, this is backwards. Like, obviously previously in the day, about 8 hours before my first ayahuasca experience, I'd just lost a baby, and this baby was crying in my arms, man, little boy. And he's saying, don't worry, Dad, it doesn't matter what you or what my mum have done, like, my time was not now, and nothing you could have done would have changed that.
Jeez.
I wasn't meant to be here. But know that I'm safe and I'm all right. I'm somewhere safe.
Did you feel comfort from it or weird?
Yeah, like honestly, I was booing my eyes. I was crying, tears streaming down my face, and I'm holding this baby and it's crying, and I'm so shell shocked, so traumatized, and so overwhelmed by what's going on that I can't stop the floodgates, man.
Wow.
Like, and all of a sudden, this baby vanishes. I sort of come back into a moment of clarity, where I'm able to clean the sick up, I'm able to wipe my ass, I'm able to get out the cubicle, go wash my hands, and make it back to my bed. And I spent the next couple of hours really going in and out myself through some mind-bending experiences, realising stuff, thinking about things that I haven't thought about in years, and making peace and clarity with situations I've been through in my life, forgiving people that have hurt me, being able to move past things. And then all of a sudden, I remember Mark Irwin tapping me on the shoulder going, ceremony's over, Matthew. Are we going training in the morning? I was like, yeah, what time? He's like 6 o'clock in the gym. I was like, yeah, I'll see you then. I was suddenly back into the most compost mentos mind state I've ever been in, and the clarity and purpose I felt all this bad energy leaving my body. And when I got back to the group, like during these ceremonies, you're not allowed to talk to each other. They'll have music on. You're allowed to communicate through like eye contact and body language, but you're not allowed to talk to each other. And the reason for that is you're all going through your own personal experiences, and you wouldn't want to jeopardize someone else's healing experience by sort of intergenerating your own experience onto them. So when we got back to the group and we're all sat in the corner, 4 or 5 people come up to me and they're like, Matthew, we're at different ends of the room and we're looking at you, and it's like almost like all these black demons were leaving your body, like all these, like the way it got described, like a Dementus from Harry Potter, like a ghost leaving your body. And it's weird because at one point I was like, almost felt like I was fitting and I was puking, and 3 different people from 3 corners of the room said it was like you had all this bad energy just leaving you. And for days afterwards, people were like, Matthew, you look so like energetic and calm, and you've got such a good presence about you. And I honestly feel like that was the most healing experience I could have had. Like they say, ayahuasca gives you what you need, not what you want from it. And I definitely feel on my first ceremony, I got what I needed out of it. I got a little bit of healing towards the situation I was going through. I managed to make peace with a lot of my past. When I went back into the room and I slept, I had the weirdest of dreams. I was in a haunted house, and everyone I've ever met in my life was there, chasing me through this house, trying to get me to drink opium tea. And I kept refusing this opium tea, and I ended up jumping out a window, and basically committing suicide in this dream so that I didn't have to drink this opium tea. And I ended up talking about it with a shaman the next day about my experience, my dream, and he says, what that sounds like is your addiction leaving your body, like, you know, under no circumstance, it doesn't matter what the situation is, who offers you it, you will no longer ever do that again. So I made peace at the fact that my addiction to hard drugs like heroin, crack, cocaine had ended, my addiction to alcohol had ended, and I'm not saying I'll ever go out and do this again, because I know from an addict's point of view I can never ever do those things again, but I made peace with a lot of things, whether it was my sobriety, whether it was the sexual abuse I'd suffered as a kid, or whether it was the things I was currently and still going through now. I managed to sort of get a little bit of closure on these situations. And for the remainder of the time, the remainder ceremonies brought me different things. My second ceremony made me feel like a kid. So I got to connect with like my inner child, and I got to make peace with him, sort of tell him the progress we'd made. Almost like I'd gone back in time and was telling him not to worry, that things will work out. My third experience on ayahuasca, I just slept for 12 hours. I think I needed a good deep rest, and I got that. And then on the last day, we all just had a laugh, and we all felt really connected as people. So each and every ceremony brought me something different. I've now come away as an English spokesperson for Athlete's Journey Home. I'm now in September starting to study natural medicines, so my chosen subject will be on psilocybin, which is the active compound in magic mushrooms. I'm doing this because I want to see how the research can help treat anxiety, how it can treat depression, how it can overcome addictions in microdosing, and I really want to study and throw myself into holistic medicines. The way I see life is we've survived for thousands of years, millions of years on natural remedies and natural medicines until big pharmaceutical companies come in. As a result of these big pharmaceutical companies coming in, people have now got addiction problems, people die of overdoses, and there's a lot more trauma and dysregulation included in the system than they care to make out. So I think maybe we need to start going back a little bit and looking at holistic approaches and natural remedies. So that's something I really want to throw myself into. I'm also studying with Being True to Yourself, which is a psychedelic integration coaching course. So I want to be able to learn how to help people make sense of their experience and prepare them going into these psychedelic coaching experiences. So I think what a lot of people confuse is they think that these medicines are just going to solve you, and they're not. What they're going to do is show you the route or the path, or they're going to identify the problems in your life that you need to fix. You, however, have got to come back into reality and still do the internal work and external work in order to solve these problems. So the psychedelics might light up the path, but the journey and the path is for you to walk. So I want to sort of come and help people understand the medicines themselves, be able to take them through these coaching experiences, be able to sort of almost counsel people through these experiences and help them make sense of it. And I think that is what my purpose is. I think when I spoke to God on ayahuasca, that is the healing I need to do to help people, as well as spreading the word and testimony of God and spreading my own testimony and ways to help people. I think these natural medicines are something that has really piqued an interest in me. It's something I resonate with. I'm now doing work with Athlete's Journey Home. I'm now getting to work with some athletes that are some of the most incredible athletes I've ever met and had the pride of meeting. I've got families in different corners of the world as a result of this trip I took with Athlete's Journey Home. And now this is my chance to be able to train myself up and give back.
That's amazing. And I mean, there's definitely a huge opioid crisis, especially in America. They're also looking, like you say, with the mushrooms and even helping PTSD, like soldiers and that. So I think there's a big unknown, part of that we still need to discover. And so for somebody who don't know what ayahuasca is, the retreat, because you talk about the brain scans, but that was a Netflix thing, right?
Yeah, Netflix and HBO were doing.
But what can they experience when they want to go now?
So if you are going on a trip like this, so it starts off with a lot of fasting, and I don't mean fasting as in stopping food. I mean, you've got to eat clean, you've got to stop drugs, you've got to stop things that sort of navigate your body in different ways, whether it's supplements, whether it's energy drinks, whatever it is, you've got to purge from a lot of things, and this is to prepare your body, your mind and your soul for the experience you're about to go on. Because this is, to make it clear, this is a physical, mental and very spiritual experience. Yeah, you get a lot from it, but you also have to give a lot in order to get from it. So neglecting things that we sort of seek as creature comforts, so like sugars, things like that, you give all that up. Then you go away on one of these retreats, you get to know the people you're in these retreats with. You then sit, you do vulnerability circles, which is almost like a word circle. You sit and you talk about traumas you've been through, things that you want to heal. You then start off by journaling, so they'll get you to start journaling, writing your intentions down, writing what it is you want to heal from, and writing and getting to know yourself and your fellow man. These experiences, then you get your brain scanned if you want your brain scanned, and they look into the parts of your brain that are maybe damaged, that aren't connecting to each other. Then you go on your first experience. There's a lot of breath work, a lot of meditation. It's a lot of making sure you are in a clear headspace, clear physically, mentally and spiritually. The facilitators of these experiences are fantastic. They'll help you really make sense of things you're going through before you go through the ayahuasca experience. And then the first ayahuasca experience, you'll drink from a cup, you'll go sit back down on your bed. You're made as comfortable as possible. You can drink water, you carry your bucket around everywhere you go with you, and you've got access to toilets and showers while you're in these ceremonies. Each ceremony will give someone something different, so it's hard to pinpoint what ayahuasca will do for you specifically without actually doing it. What happened to me in my experience was completely different to some people's experiences. Some people did the first ceremony, didn't feel nothing, the second ceremony didn't feel nothing, and then they got blown into a different dimension in the third ceremony. So it gives you, like it says, it gives you what you need, even if you don't understand that you need what it gives you. So like when I had, on my third ceremony, a deep rest and I slept for 12 hours, I felt like I'd missed out on a bit of a profound experience. But then when I think about it, maybe my body needed rest. So ayahuasca gave me what I needed at the time, even if what I needed wasn't of my understanding. What I would say is do the research into these retreats before you go. Like there's a lot of black market retreats and a lot of dark alley retreats. Look into the reviews, read the testimonies of people leaving these places, watch the videos, and look at the integration work that these places do. So when I left Lawara, they're ringing you up a couple of weeks later, making sure you're getting back into society, right? Making sure that you are back to being able to cope without that sort of safety blanket on.
And do you think, with like shamanism and that, do you think there's a part where that kind of maybe goes against Christianity, say where it's spirits and
so this
things?
is a conversation, I did an interview for a psychedelic podcast the other day, yeah. This is a conversation that brought up, as well as the AA route and how did I feel about sobriety. So for me, I think whatever brings you closer to God and whatever connects you spiritually to the world, to the energy that surrounds us, to being a good person, to getting in touch with your morals and your lifestyle, how can Christianity be against that? And I also think, like, for instance, these are not man-made. These are not man-made narcotics. Like when you look at cocaine, yes, coca leaf grows from the ground, yeah, but you've got to add a lot of chemicals and things to it to create it into the drug it is. Things like ayahuasca, it's a natural plant. Like cannabis, it's a natural plant. So my view on this is, why would these not meant to be ingested if God has put them on the earth? Like God will give you all the medicines and all the fruits from the earth to be able to stay alive and take care of ourselves. So I think these have been put there for those healing experiences, for them connections to spirituality, for those journeys that some people can't take without these things, the healing and the profound experience it brings you. I don't think God would be against that, man. I don't think Christianity should. I think, like, to be Christian, to be a child of God is to be open-minded, non-judgmental and to move forward. So I think, like, man-made drugs, if you're happy taking a paracetamol or you're happy taking a codeine, if you've got a headache or you're going through a little bit of pain, how can you be mad at people for trying to solve post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety? Like, I've been through a lot in my life, like from the sexual abuse, from the drug addictions. So to go and do something like this, to get clarity and purpose on where I want to be in life, to give me healing and to be able to forgive people that have put me through some of this stuff. Like, I'm able to forgive the person that sexually abused me when I was a kid because of something like this. And I'm not saying I forgive him in the sense of what he's done, but I forgive him for me. I forgive him so that I'm not holding on and harbouring on to all this pain and hatred, because animosity is a lot to carry about on a daily basis. And I think the way we think, the way we act, the way we speak to ourselves shape our reality, man. Like, your brain doesn't know the difference between you saying I'm depressed or I'm happy. It shapes the reality based on what you tell it and the work you put in. So like now, since getting sober, I live a faithful life. I live a life of faith. I go out and do good things for people. You know, I've been homeless countless times in my life. So now when I see homeless people, I'll buy them food. I always try to give back to people from experiences I've lived through, whether it's sharing my testimony, whether it's going into prisons, whether it's sharing my experiences on podcasts like this, whether it's spreading the message of God, going into rehabs, helping people get into rehabs, leaving my inbox open to people to be able to message. I think these are all things that help us heal and help us move forward, help us solidify our faith and help us fundamentally grow as people. So I think all of it, whether it's medication, whether it's coming away and looking at doing these things, or whether it's just finding faith, all these things are good basis to sort of live a good and fulfilled life.
And then how did the bare knuckle boxing come into your life?
So bare knuckle boxing about 3 years ago, when I started my recovery journey, I got into lifting weights, I got into training. Now I did this for something to do, for something to almost trade the drug addiction for a healthy addiction. I thought that even if I got addicted to this, all it was going to do was benefit me in terms of like sort of recreating my body, reshaping my body from what it was to what it is now, getting myself healthy and fit, because obviously they're saying health is wealth. So I thought, I can't really go wrong if I'm going to the gym. Going to the gym, lifting weights led to me hitting a punching bag, remembering times that I've had fights and enjoying fights. And I thought, oh, well, do you know what? I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to take an unlicensed fight. So I took a boxing fight, but in MMA gloves. And then I won my first fight. A week later, I was throwing myself into a bare knuckle fight. A lot of people said because I'd left training too late in life, I'd started when I was 26, 27, I was getting into it too late, I would never make something of myself. 6 months later, I was signed as a professional bare knuckle fighter. I've won a couple of championship belts in hybrid boxing. I've got to do things. I've got to come on podcasts and share about my experience as a result of my boxing. I've got to meet fighters that I've looked up to for years. I've got to throw myself and channel myself into something that's keep me disciplined, keep me focused, and has really benefited my platform, my mental health, my overall physical shape and well-being. So for me, bare knuckle boxing has been a lifeline, a fundamental for me. It was often what I seen my purpose as when I got sober. Going away on this retreat has made me realise I've got a bigger purpose in life, that I might enjoy bare knuckle boxing, but it's not everything to do with my personality. It's not all I'm about. So it gives me another chance to explore different avenues, to get creative. But bare knuckle boxing will always be, for me, a gladiatorial sport that has kept me clean, focused, sober, and I get to channel some fucking aggression out, man.
Yeah.
That's a big part for me. I like fighting, whether I win or lose. I mean, obviously I like winning more, but win or lose, you leave everything in the ring. There's no animosity. It's a sport between gentlemen, and I don't hate anyone I get in the ring with. Maybe when we're fighting, I don't like you particularly at the time, but like there's never any animosity when we get out. It's a gentleman's sport. We can hug, we can shake hands. I fought Alex Wilson, who's now going for a world championship belt in BKB, so he's one of the best. And that's a brother for life. I've fought other people, and they're people I still keep in touch with and stay in contact with, and train with, meet up with. It's given me a good sense of family and community.
And what does stepping into the bare knuckle ring feel like mentally?
A lot of people think it'd be really difficult. For me, it's like I'm nervous because there's someone in that ring that wants to punch my fucking head off my shoulders, and they want to do to me what I want to do to them. But it's raw, primal, and I think it's one of the coolest, greatest experiences of my life. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared every time I got in there. But the second the bell goes, I remember I've been through far much worse and what's going to happen to me in the ring.
Yeah.
And then I just get the fuck on with it, man.
And you think the fighting help you channel that trauma and stuff from the past.
Give me a reason to stay disciplined. It give me a reason to train, and it also give me a way to fight without getting locked up. It give me a way to sort of go out and have it out with someone who not only like you've not got beef with, but someone wants to have it out with you. Like often when we fight in the streets, there's one person that maybe wants it more or wants it less. Whereas when you're in that ring, whether it's a trigon, whether it's a cage, whether it's a boxing ring, when you're in there, you can't fucking lie. Like if you've not worked hard enough, it'll show. If you've not trained, it'll show. There's no lying. It's one of the most honest and profound sports in the world. And I think for me, that's what resonates with me. The honesty that goes into it, the training that goes into it, and the love for violence.
Do the demons from your past still show up today?
Yeah, of course. I still get times where I think about using. A good way I've got out of, obviously I've got my steps. Some of the steps are still used from A and NA. They're still applicable in my life, you know, admitting that I'm powerless, admitting that I can't do it on my own. Other things that I've managed to do, you know, when I get thoughts about using, I just say to myself, I don't do that anymore, and I've managed to rewire my brain. So now the second those thoughts come in, I go, I don't want to do that anymore. Sometimes I come in contact with people that maybe recognise me from past lives, expecting me to still be the same. Like when I went into Dearbolt prison, I seen someone who's like, oh, I remember you. I was like, listen, mate, who you remember is not who I am anymore. So, you know, we'll move forward and we'll talk about who I am, not who I was. So sometimes the demons do creep up, but I'm getting better at keeping them at bay.
And if someone is listening right now who is suffering with trauma and addiction like you did, what would you tell them?
Talk about it, man. Don't keep it bottled up. Listen, it might feel shameful, it might feel embarrassing, but listen, it's not your fault. These people have a very good way of manipulating situations in order to be able to gain access to you, to be able to do the things they do. It's nothing you've done wrong, it's no reflection on you as a person, but listen, talking about it and seeking help and doing the inner work to move forward is massive, man. Whether it's finding faith, whether it's going to rehab, whether it's sharing your experiences with other people to get it off your chest, do it. Because listen, your story might save someone else, your story might save yourself, and even in times where you can't see the light and you feel like the world is darkness, you might be the light that's going to arise from this situation. So you might not feel it now, you might not feel it in a couple of years' time, but your story might make the difference, and that might shape someone else's life. And fundamentally, as human beings, we've all got to try and help each other grow, help each other heal, and really put a good moralistic view in the world, because I think that's something we've come away from, is the community value to life. But yeah, talk about it, don't keep it bottled up, man, because your mental health and your life is more important. And I'm sure a friend would rather pick up the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning than pick up your coffin and carry it to your funeral.
100%. And Matthew, is there anything that we haven't touched on or said that you feel people need to hear?
I think fundamentally a tired body can lead to a healthy mind. I think if you're thinking about what you can do when you get sober, because ultimately, as you said before, man, we realise we haven't got a lot in common even with ourselves. Fundamentally, getting wrecked becomes a big part of our life. Doing drugs and drink becomes a big source of our happiness. Go out and exercise, find stuff you enjoy doing outside of that. Hobbies that you've got to remember who you were before all the drug abuse, before all the abuse started, and you've got to fall back in love with yourself. That's like a big step. That's a massive step, man. You've got to love yourself, because how can anyone love you if you don't love yourself? So I think fundamentally it's about healing. It's about taking whatever step you need to take to move forward. And it's about fundamentally trying to be a better person. So whatever anyone takes from this podcast is that I'm not perfect. You know, I might go on about preaching about God. I'm still a sinner. I might preach about, you know, recovery. I still have times where I feel set back. Life is never going to be perfect. Life is always going to be on life's terms. But it's about how you deal with it, how you move forward, and fundamentally how we change as people in order to help heal ourselves and heal other people. And that's great. That's what my message is about, man.
And you're okay for people to reach out to you?
100%.
We'll leave his handle in the description of this video. So if you want to get in touch with Matthew, talk to him maybe about this experience, or if you think about ayahuasca or anything, you can get in touch, reach out to him, and he'll get in touch with you. If you like what you see on this episode, you know where to find me. Brother, it was an absolute pleasure to have you.
God bless, brother.
God bless. Thanks.